So let it be written, so let it be done. This is Tabletop Terrors. Welcome, everybody. Just James here today, and I am graced by the presence of Jesse Howard, creator, I believe founder of Clothespin Games and creator of the Hype Tag game right now, live on Kickstarter. We're going to talk a little bit about this game, talk about how Jesse and I met, actually, as well as he's going to go over some of the mechanics of the game, and so we can give you guys an idea of what it is, and you can go back it. So, Jesse, how's it going?
It's going really well. We're in the middle of a Kickstarter, so like
right, yeah.
Well, it's like
very unique feeling. Yeah, that's
yes,
a fun one.
Busy doing something I really love doing, and it's great to be talking with you for the second time ever.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It seems worth bringing up how we met. Jesse is a teacher, sort of in the Northeast, and Cassie, who most of you know, my wife, she was in a class of yours. I think she was did like a theater production with you, I believe.
Yeah, I run a theater program, and Cassie was in actually my first production at the school that I'm still at right now. So
oh, okay, cool.
We did one show together.
Yeah, that's really awesome. So Cassie was just on Facebook one day and saw that you were making this game. That you announced the Kickstarter, and she knew that I helped people with Kickstarters, did some consulting and stuff, and I said, well, she's like, yeah, it was a really cool teacher of mine. It was really awesome. She really enjoyed the class, doing the production. And so I was like, well, if you don't think it's too weird, I should reach out to him. I'd love to talk to him about his game and stuff. And so, yeah, we got to talking, and I don't know. So far, you've been really cool, and it's been really cool talking about your game.
Yeah, same here. I mean, you reached out to me and you were like, hey, I've done some Kickstarter stuff. If you want to chat, I was like, I'm always open to hearing ideas because this is my first Kickstarter. And yeah, we got on, we chatted. It felt like we kind of hit it off, and you had some really cool things to say. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so you sort of pitched your game to me as Magic the Gathering meets Uno. Can you speak more to that? Tell me about a little bit about this game called Hype Tag.
Yeah, I mean, I love games, but particularly I love card games, and I am a long time I played Magic way back in the day and kind of came and went from Magic. But the problem with a game like Magic is that you ask someone, hey, you want to play Magic? You want to learn how to play Magic? And they're like, oh, that's like a lifestyle. Like I'm not like I don't have time for that. Like it's like taking on another part-time job,
Exactly, baggage comes with that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And like I only play a certain kind of Magic that doesn't have a lot of the baggage, and so
oh yeah,
I just always found it hard to find people to play. Once they play, they would enjoy it. But I love the complexity of that kind of game. I mean, Magic kind of is like the top end of complexity. So I always just thought to myself, man, it's too bad there's not a card game. And there are plenty of card games that sort of hit more of a middle ground. But I sort of had this idea, like it'd be great to take some of what I love from like TCGs and CCGs and stuff and marry it to something a little bit more interactive and fun and fast moving, like something like Uno. And the game is neither Magic nor Uno, but if the two had a baby, it would be Hype Tag. And even down to the fact that the game kind of functions around two decks of cards, and you have both, cards from both decks in your hand at all times, but they have the same card back, so your opponent doesn't know how many of which you have. So it's kind of this interaction between like, combos and complexity and strategy, and also like, it's a game of tag. So one of the sets of cards is the tag deck, and you have to end your turn by tagging, and that's sort of the point in your turn. That's a little more Uno-like. So I think it's sort of, like my wife is like, she used to play Magic, but she was just like, this is too much. I can't keep up with this. But she loves this game because it sort of like scratches that itch to like strategize and think, and it's a puzzle, but it's also like fast and fun, and like, it's maybe not the kind of thing you're lying awake in bed at night being like, I got to get that card, and I got to wait, I could have done that combo. And like, although she might say she does a little of that too, but
but yeah, exactly. It still has a depth, right? Like you said, scratching that itch. It's just not.
Absolutely.
It's not the lifestyle choice, as you put it. That is, deciding to learn about the new Magic meta. It's just right. A totally different thing. So,
but it actually, I was just going to say, in a cool way, this game kind of has its own little meta. And once you get to know it, you do start to have moments where you're sort of like, ooh, what if they have this card? What if they have that card, right? But it's one set of cards, and it's not a trading card game. It's so once you kind of know it, you start to kind of have certain cards in mind, and like, so it does appeal to that side, but you don't have to play it at that level of complexity either. It's kind of like, partly because of the theme, the theme is basically a bunch of like sarcastic, like hipster kids on the playground. And although it's kids, it's not a kids game in the sense that it's meant to be more about nostalgia. It's got a little bit of that snarky kind of sense of humor. I've noticed that like teenagers and like college age kids and like gaming families, like that tends to appeal to that group of people because it's kind of like, oh my God, like everybody can remember like recess, right?
Exactly. It's very relatable. Yeah. And I know what you mean. The theme is, kids on the playground, but yeah, a lot of us were kids on the playground, and it's like, it is a very relatable thing, and kids can play with parents, that is really cool. I love that.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's and also I think it's the kind of game that like the younger kids will see the older kids playing and then they're like, ooh, I want to play that too. Or they relate to one of the characters or something like that. So I have found like for example, at the end of the school year, I was playing with some of my students wanted to try out a prototype or whatever. And it was mostly like a bunch of ninth graders who I don't really think of as like the target market. None of them were gamers. None of them played much more than say like Uno and that kind of side. And they were coming back every day. More kids came and they were playing and playing and playing. And the last day of school, I had a couple prototypes and I noticed that one of them was missing. And this ninth grade girl like that I had taught like reaches out to me. She's like, by the way, I'm sorry, kind of not sorry, but I took one of your prototypes home so that I could play it with my friends. And she has like sent me pictures of her family and her friends like playing the game and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, that's probably a good sign. Like
that's really great. Yeah, a game's so good. A kid took one home. They're like, I just got a couple. I've got to play this with my friends. Like that's a unique feeling. That's really cool.
Kid steals prototype. Like I want that on a T-shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. You think they funded quick? Our game was our prototype was stolen by a ninth grader.
Yes, exactly.
I love that. Oh, that's really cool. So it's interesting. I think that theme because I don't know. I guess part of me always saw Magic as being a very serious game, partly because they have a little bit of a serious tone. So I love that you are working to make a game that has children in it, but isn't necessarily about kids. It's just a relatable concept, but it sounds like there's a lot of depth there.
Yes.
Can you speak a little more to what how some of the gameplay elements came about? I know, like you said, you tag someone else when it's your turn. There's not a normal turn order, and that was something I was really interested in as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you pointed out the sort of the humor, what I think of as the humor aspect, because I worked on earlier versions of this game. And honestly, for a long time, I think I was trying too hard to make it like a serious game for serious people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Because so many of those games, I mean, Magic does have a sense of humor occasionally, but like, so much of Magic is so serious. And I think part of what I wanted to do was to say, hey, what if I had a game that was kind of goofy and humorous, but also had the depth? And honestly, that's how I try to be as a person. Like people who know me, I'm a goofy person. I love comedy. I love making people smile and laugh. But I'm also like a deep guy, and I like to have like the deep talk at like midnight, over a cup of tea. And so I just kept thinking there's got to be a way that it can be goofy and fun, and you can have kids like, like just an example, like here's a card, like this card is whatever, just like the humor of like everybody kind of has done that or someone's done it to you. And if I'm going to like block a move in the game to play a sass card called whatever, I get to just be like, whatever, bro.
Yeah.
Right. And I also found that it takes some of the sting out of things when they don't go your way in a game to have the game be humorous. So anyway, I was just going to say that as far as like the gameplay goes, like first inspiration was kind of like the TCG meets classic card game thing. But the whole tagging idea really came from watching a bunch of kids playing Foursquare one day. And I was like, wow, it'd be really cool if there was a card game where you had some like choice over whose turn was next. And I'm not going to lie, I got lost down that road for a really long time before I figured it out, including like a 2-year hiatus from early versions of the game, like chucked it against the wall because like I couldn't solve how to do that without letting people box somebody out of the game when that person was trying to win. I won't bore you with all the versions of it that I tried, but the earliest version was me and my like young daughter at the time. And they were literally cards with like arrows on them. You like aimed them at the person. I was like, she looked up at me like 6 years old or whatever. She was like, Dad, this is terrible. Like, I know, but the idea is cool.
Exactly. Yeah. You're like, no. Look past this simple implementation. It's going to be great. I promise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and back when the game was more serious, it was like rogues in the kingdom and stuff. I still called the mechanic of choosing whose turn was next. I called it tagging, even though it
Oh,
didn't
that's
make a
great.
ton of sense. And finally, I was like, I just wish this game was more me. What if it was
Oh,
just a
yeah.
bunch of kids actually playing tag? And that was about like 18 months ago, maybe 20 months ago, when I kind of had my eureka moment of like, everything just started to fall into place because it was just more me. It was like more my sense of humor, more my style. And suddenly this mechanic that like was troubling me, it became more thematically like integrated, and it just like, I don't know, things just clicked into place with a little bit more. And so, I mean, I could say a little bit more about that mechanic if you want, like how it works, but it's very simple. At the end of your turn, you have to play a tag card. And here's an example of a tag card. It's called Cheap Shot. Um, and all these cards basically, you have a little target, which is this, and you place it on another player, and then you play a tag card. And the first, I'm sorry about the glare here, but the first ability there, the draw two cards, you just do that as you play it. Some of them say like steal a card from tagged player. So, but you'll notice below that there's a pair effect. And the pair effect is on my next turn. If I play another cheap shot, I draw two cards again, and I also get the pair effect. And I can explain more about that later. But so what's cool is you're sort of like, you're strategizing about like what you're going to play now, but also what you're going to play next turn, so that those pair effects do the things you want them to do. And the way it works is they're kind of laid out in front of you. You play one, you play the next one, and they're kind of laid out in what's called your field. And the basic rule is simple. If you're playing with 3 or 4 players, for example, you have to tag the easy target, which is the player with the fewest or tied for fewest cards in their field. So there are times where they're tied and I get to choose. There are times where one has more than the other and I don't get to choose. So there's this really cool variance of like, oh, who do I get to tag? And strategically, it matters at times because you're trying to run each other out of cards, force somebody to call a timeout. That's one of the things you're trying to do.
Oh, that's
So
really cool.
so it's not just like I get to choose and it doesn't matter. It's like sometimes it's like, hey, I tag you and I steal your last card and now you're out of cards. You can't tag. And that means you have to call a timeout. So you're actually kind of trying to strategize about how to be the last player to tag somebody who then goes out.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like there's a lot of looking into the future, which is
Yes.
something that from a game with this theme I wouldn't expect as much, right? But everything you're saying is telling me that no, you need to be looking at everybody's cards and thinking ahead. It's not yeah, it's really interesting. It's really interesting to hear that because I can already hear even before we're talking about those your meters, right? I don't know exactly,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, already I can see how, like you said, it depends. It matters who you choose, and the choices are different every time. And I think that's great.
Yes. Well, and honestly, like it matters who you choose. Like that reminds me of social dynamics of the playground. It's like, who's going to be my friend? Who am I going to tag? Who am I going to pick to be on my team? And it creates this kind of little social dynamic, which is also really fun. And it's nice that sometimes you don't get a choice because then when you steal from them, they don't feel targeted because you're like, I had no choice. Other times
Exactly.
you're like, I'm
Yeah.
coming for you. You know
Yeah,
what I
and,
mean?
and I know exactly what you mean. I've played games where there are those little rivalries where you're always going after this person, but like you said, because sometimes you're constrained, you can't box out one player. Exactly as you said, I can see that being a big problem, but it solves that really well. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
And that is that easy target mechanism of like the fewest or tied for fewest cards. Like that was the thing that it took me a long time to figure out. But it really works well and it creates some very interesting moments. And it what's cool is you are trying to think into the future, but you can't always execute because there are
Oh
response
yeah,
cards. And that's also like recess. It's just sort of like today I'm going to be the king of the hill and I'm going to get the top of the slide, and then you get there and everyone else is there and nobody likes you, and it's like it's
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Some of that's my own like being a nerd on the playground trauma from when I was a kid, like playing itself out. But it's kind of a fun way for us as adults or even for young adults to kind of remember that and be like, hey, it's not happening anymore, but like I can do it in the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
Um,
I'm really excited for what seems like a little bit of a casual game with, like you said, an unexpected depth, but that you can play, and it's a little more. It seems like the kind of game, if you wanted, you can really focus on and, like you said, strategize. But equally, you can play with friends hanging out because it's somewhat casual, and like you said, it
yeah.
takes the sting out of a little bit. You're not really getting against each other too much, and Yeah, it sounds like it kind of
Yeah.
fits in a really nice niche.
Yeah, it does. And people do get very invested. And I'm not going to say, there haven't been the occasional table flips or
Yeah, yeah,
but it
absolutely.
is the kind of, it is the kind of game that I would say unexpected depth, and it makes people like, I've had a lot of playtesters say even if they lose, the games are really frequently close, and that's because of the hype mechanism, which I'll talk about in a minute. Games are, I tracked it when we did like blind playtesting. It was like a really high percentage of the games were close, and that's because when you're behind, you're actually more powerful, which again, I can get into that more. But because of that, people are invested like right down to the end. And so when somebody makes the big play and makes their final move, they're like, running around the room, like doing a victory lap.
Yeah, yeah,
And
that's
everybody
great.
else, according to a lot of the play testers, it's like at that moment, even if they lost, they're thinking, I want to play again. I want another crack at this. And one of my favorite comments somebody said to me once was, every hand is like a little puzzle, and I'm just trying to solve the puzzle. And sometimes my plans get foiled.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, here, let me tell you about the hype meter.
Yeah, yeah, let's talk about that.
The hype meter has to do with how you win the game. So you're going to the playground, the bell rings, you're running out there. I always like to show people this card too. This is a card called Get Riled. This is kind of like an example of what's happening at the beginning of the game.
Mischief.
And
Oh, cool.
yeah, this is a mischief card. The hype deck has three kinds of card: mischief, characters, and sass, and they'll come up as we chat. But mischiefs
Awesome.
are just like they do one thing and then you discard them basically. So what's cool about this card is it moves you. It says move up two. So let me explain what that means. You're trying to get hyped up on the playground. This is your hype meter. And by the way, this is Zoe. There are 4 like player characters that you get to choose, and they all have a little trait ability which comes into play. So your goal in the game is basically simple. You start, let me just show you here. You start, and this is my prototype. That's why it's like taped together. But you start at 1. Your goal is to make plays, whether it's tags, hype cards, whatever. Make plays to get up to 10 on your hype meter. And then your hype meter flips over to the simmer down side, where you now have to simmer down and go back down to 1. So the game ends when you've gone up to 10, flipped your hype meter, and go back down to 1. But what's cool about it is it's not just a race. This is also like a power structure mechanism. So in the hype deck, all of these cards, like here's Get Riled again, have a little number in the corner. This one says 2+. So that just means that you have to be at space 2 or higher on your hype meter in order to play this card. Now, obviously,
okay.
this card is playable for most of the game. Some cards are, like this one. It's a very similar card for going down. Pity Party. You can see Ren's having kind of a rough day there. This one is a 5+, so you cannot play this card until you're at 5 or higher. And that includes, as you're coming back down, if you get below 5, you can no longer play the card.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Now, most of them are not just like you can't play it, but rather there are cards with what we call hype bonuses. So here's an example, Sugar Binge. This card is a 3, and you can play it. Any player moves up or down 1. You get to choose the up or down one. You get to choose the player.
Okay.
But if you're at 7 or higher, you get a move of 2 instead. So this is a lot of cards in the game. Probably half of them have this mechanic where they're playable early, but they're more powerful the higher you get. Trouble is, when you start coming down, you lose power and flexibility, and you have to lean more on your tag cards and other elements of the game. So what's really cool about it is every card, I mean, this card, Pity Party that I just showed you, you draw this card at the beginning of the game. It's not super great. Like, you're trying to move up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to move yourself down. You could aim it at your opponent, and you can do that. You can move your opponent down to slow them down with that second option. But basically, cards that are good at one point are not as good at another point, or like they're good in a different way, or, so you're always gauging, where am I on my hype meter? Where are my opponents on their hype meter? What do my cards do? And then the tag cards, some of them pair for up moves, some pair for down moves. There's one called Ambush, which lets you steal a card when you play it, but it pairs for a choice of up or down, so always good, but not as powerful. And so every moment of the game, you're like assessing kind of where you're at. And again, for me, that is like social dynamics of childhood. You're just constantly looking around. Who's popular? Who's got the power? Who's got the social credibility? Who's the teacher mad at? Like,
Yeah, it's moving so quickly. Absolutely. It
yeah.
sounds like it's absolutely encompassing that feeling.
Yeah, and what's cool is that you can't plan too far ahead because somebody's like
Yeah.
whatevering you or somebody's doing this. And there are these cards called SAS cards, which I mentioned. These are another kind of, and this is whatever. This one blocks any card, a tag card or a hype card, and just bounces it back to your hand, right?
I
It's
love
like
that.
whatever,
Yeah,
that didn't even
just
happen.
no, yeah, didn't count.
So let's say I'm trying to like make a pair with like I'm trying to make a pair with my tag cards. You could play this to bounce that tag card back, and now they don't get the pair.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's great. 'Cause
Or
yeah, okay.
Yeah. Or let's say I play Pity Party and somebody blocks it with another SAS card. I could block their SAS card with my whatever to stop them. So sometimes you get these chains of SAS cards and like for anyone who's played a trading card game, the rules are the same. It's like last card in, first one out, like they resolve in reverse order or whatever. But and so, 3 or 4 player games, sometimes people are playing these SAS cards on while other people are having an exchange, but it's like to their advantage to jump in and or when you're playing 2-player, it's much more targeted. Everything you're doing is against that one opponent. And so it really is never the same game twice. And of course, I'm going to say that. I'm the designer, but I have heard that from playtesters over and over and over. And it makes them want to play again. And look, if you don't like any complexity in your game, like this game is not for you. And if you like to sort of, have it be a lifestyle, well, maybe this is not more of a part-time lifestyle. But I've noticed that, I've designed a lot of the cards to be like if you're looking for the higher level of complexity, you'll find it. But also what it does on a surface is also like, oh, you kind of just get it. I move up 2. Like, it's not that complicated. And so I've seen plenty of people play the game at a very casual level. And I have also seen it played like by hardcore Magic players trying to win.
Yeah, exactly. Simple to learn, impossible to master, or difficult to master, right? Like, yeah, it's very easy to pick up, but there's definitely some depth there. I really like that.
Yeah. And actually, I don't know if this is a good time for this or not, but I would love to share a little anecdote of how I picked this game back up after almost 2 years of not working on it.
I would love to hear about that. That sounds very interesting, because another thing that we sometimes talk about is creators and some of their struggles with putting something down or picking it up or not sure what not being sure what to do. So when you were saying that, it was like just it matched what some people are here to see. So absolutely, I'd love to hear all about that.
Yeah, especially like I'm not a professional game designer. I have a full-time job and a family, and so I have to sneak this in the off hours, and I worked on the game for quite a long time. It was called Ploy at the time, which matters. And I actually did at one point get this group of like Magic players to like play test it, and they were trying to break it, and they just loved it. And then like I got frustrated and I kind of abandoned it, and probably 2 years went by, and I had moved on to designing some other games, but like in the back of my mind somewhere, I was just like, man, I never cracked the code on Ploy. So in December of 2018, out of the blue, I got an email from this guy, Norman, and he's given me permission to share this. He's now a backer of our Kickstarter,
awesome.
and he was a playtester and so forth too. But out of the blue, I get this voicemail. And I would love to play it for you if you'll allow.
That would be great. Yeah,
it's pretty short. So this is the email. This was December of 2018 from my good friend Norman here. So here we go.
Jesse, what's up, man? Long time no talk to. It's Norman. Hey, I was wondering what's going on with Ploy. I want to play that game. I want to buy it off you. Hopefully all is well. Hopefully big things going on, but let me know. It's such a sweet game. I was telling some friends about it, and I was like, man, I wish I could play that game again. But all right, dude, later, man.
That's really amazing. That's crazy. And honestly, that's something special. You know what I mean? There's no other game in the world like it that is like, and so you're saying basically, well, I guess continue your story. You're a better storyteller than I'm a question asker.
You know what I'm going to say. I'm even getting like a little I'm getting a little weepy right now. Like there was something about that voicemail. I really got like weepy. There's something about the tone of his voice and the way he just says, man, it's such a sweet game. Like it just really like touched me.
It was genuine. Like he meant it. Like he called wondering about that game and then realized he needed to ask you how you were doing. Like he loves that game,
Yeah. And I had not been in touch with this guy for like years. And we
That's
weren't even
amazing.
like, we didn't hang out that much. There was a couple months where we like played a lot of Ploy and Magic and like, and then he moved. He actually moved to Colorado, and
Oh, yeah.
he just dug my number out of his phone. And so something happened to me in that moment. I mean, part of why I'm a teacher and a theater teacher is because I love to like connect with people and reach people. I love to bring people together. That's what I love to do.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm passionate about. And he moved me with that voicemail. And at that moment, I was like, you know what? I am dragging that game back out, and I'm gonna figure out what was fun and what was broken, and like I'm doing it for Norman. Like, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
now you have somebody to do it for, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And I really like literally like 5 minutes after that voicemail, I went to my closet. Luckily, I'd rubber banded some of the best versions of the old game. I dragged it out. I called up some of my former students who had played the game. And for a couple of months, we met once a week and we played all the versions of the game.
Wow.
And we were just like, let's be ruthless. And we figured out what was fun, and we figured out what had to go, and we just stripped away the fat, and we figured out there was one thing that had to be solved, because this non-standard turn order was part of the fun. And we didn't figure that out at those sessions, but I was like, I believe that I can solve it now. And that was when I had the inspiration to turn it into tag and recess, and it just reinvigorated the whole thing.
Yeah, and like you said, it
And
all
so
clicked
after-
at that point. Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah,
all
it really
came right
did.
together.
And for anyone, you know, who's watching or listening who is a game designer, but particularly someone who's new at it or a first timer, I do a lot of creative projects. And one of the things I've learned is you have to like figure out what you're actually trying to say. Like, what's your voice and who are you? Like, where are you in this project? And that was the moment where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of trying to make this serious game to impress like serious game designers. I'm just going to make my game that feels like me, and people can like it or not. Like, and it became goofy and fun, and it just kind of lit up for me. And all of a sudden, things like even the things I had to solve, the theme just really helped things fall into place. And that's not to say it wasn't hard. Like, I spent several months like really just ruthlessly working on it. And finally, I felt like I had a workable version, and I decided it was time to take the risk and see if I could get a graphic designer and an artist to start working with me and take a chance on me and believe in my vision. And so I had a friend who had previously worked at my school who'd moved away, who I had done a bunch of graphic design for posters for plays. Her name's Kelly Lance. One of my greatest friends now. Like, we spent a lot of time working together. I called her up and I said, look, I can't promise you a ton of cash, but like, I want to finish this game. Like, would you be interested in working on the graphic design? And I have to admit, I think I sorely underestimated like how much time we would need. But I was honest about it. I was like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
So she jumped on board. And then a former student of mine had his sister was an artist, and I'd seen some of her work displayed in the local community, and it was really cool. So I called her up. That's Megan Spaniel, who's now the artist for Hype Tag. And I asked her kind of the same thing. Look, I'm just trying to like make this game. It might be fun for you to do the art, and we could get your work out there. And so the three of us, Kelly and Megan and I, that's Clothespin Games right there. Plus, I have to give props to like my family because they did so much playtesting. But we worked for like 18 plus months, you know, all through, you know, COVID and everything like that. Like, we just worked. We met every single week, and we just chipped away at the layout, the design, the rule book, the art. And like, I can't even tell you how grateful I am to the two of them for the amazing work that they've done. But we also just have had a blast. And now the game is done, and we were just like, all right, we got to price it out, do a Kickstarter. And, you know, I feel like we are the kind of people who, like, we've never done this before, but we've been really, really deliberate and careful, and like, we've just done our best work, you know?
Yeah.
And because of that, I feel really proud of the game as a game, but also just as a project. And so I had to shout out Megan and Kelly, because I would not be sitting here talking to you about a Kickstarter at all if it wasn't for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a really big deal. Is like you said, you have told this very interesting story of this game you designed, but then there's this whole separate process of taking it from these decks that are rubber banded in your back of your closet to something that someone else can then play. Like you said, even the rule book and the cards, the prototypes, that alone, and it's really cool because you've it's hard not to point out that you've really cut down on the components by making them all do like extra things, having this double card backs and having that you flip it over and you simmer down and that you have the pairs, like it's a stronger card. It's an elegant little game that has just absolutely been play tested. But again, then you made it, and like you said, so shout out to them. That's 18 months of that's making a game. And sometimes that's also what creators need to hear is it takes a long time. And even when you're done with the game, you're not done with making the game, and it's that's a big part of it.
Well, just the time we spent doing the Kickstarter page itself.
Yeah.
The
right.
graphic design, the video, the video components, the text writing. And we're actually about to start up another round of revisions on the rulebook just because we just want to keep refining it, keep making it. And actually, we learned a lot about how to explain the game by making the Kickstarter page, which was actually really educational because you have to be succinct, and the other thing I need to say too is the art for a game. If any of your viewers are artists or who are working on art with an artist, I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of art that a card game needs. I mean, I've got 2 decks of cards,
right?
And I think Megan has done something like 50 plus discrete pieces of art for the game, including, we had to develop all of these, the 4 main characters. So that's Zoe. See if I can show you at least show you one other one. That's Nico.
That's cool.
And she's actually on a card. I've shown you, this is Ren. And then I'll show you, Oliver was the one on Sugar Binge. And again, there are lots of other kids in the game, but these are the 4 players that you can be. And then there's all the character cards. You have kids on your sideline who are rooting for you. They're called characters, and they're sort of like the rule breaker cards. They sit there and they say, oh, opponents can't steal from you, or opponents can't play sass cards on your turn. It's actually one of my favorite cards.
That's cool.
Mrs. Decree, the recess overlord. Opponents can't play sass cards on your turn, right? That's what she should
that's
do.
So great. Yeah, and I love their name is Mrs. Decree. It's such like a headmistress style name and just a funny wordplay. I love stuff like that.
Yes.
That's
or
so good.
here's Gubin. He's the playground hound, and basically when you get to your tag step, you get to look at 2 cards on the top of the tag deck. If you name a tag card, and he goes and fetches it for you, and if you name the right one, you get to keep it.
That's so cool. Yeah.
It's just stuff like that, and then. The only other thing I'll mention that I haven't yet is when you get to 10, when you get to top hype, at least when I was a kid, I always wanted to impress the older kids on the playground. And they were too aloof. They didn't care about me. But the way that the game works is when you get to 10, you get an older kid card. And the older kids are like special characters that are very powerful and basically help you when you're trying to move down the hype meter, basically.
Oh, okay.
And they're loyal, which means they can't be messed with. The characters can be removed. Some of them can even be, there's cards that reposition them, you peer pressure them over to your little zone, whatever.
That is so
But the
cool.
older kids are loyal. They can't be removed or repositioned until your hype is low enough that they just don't care anymore.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so interesting.
So there's 12 or 13 of these, and you sort of draw one. And so here's just an example of that. Here's Ray by Play. And he basically says that you get all of your hype bonuses, even if you're at 3 on the hype meter, you still get all your hype bonuses for your hype cards.
Yeah. Wow.
And so Megan had to design, we worked together obviously, but as far as the art, she had to do, there's 12 or 13 of these.
Yeah.
Including, I just want to show one last one, James.
Oh yeah. Show as many.
This one, we're giving this one away to our backers if we reach our goal. This is crowdfunder Fran.
Oh, cool.
And, she's basically the kid who's got her laptop, and yeah, she basically lets you just draw a card at the beginning of your turn, because normally there actually is no auto draw step in hype tag.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's a phase called regroup where you can discard to draw. So let's say you have a 7+ hype card and you're at 2. Well, you might want to hang on to it, but there's also a mechanism for getting rid of those cards. It's one of the things I don't like about Magic, is if I have a 8-mana spell in my hand, I cannot get rid of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe you have a tag card that pairs to move the direction you don't want to move. You can discard, and you always can draw from either deck.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, so you get to sort of balance your own resources there. You get to make your own decisions, and I feel like that adds a lot to the strategy. Because it's up to you. It's not random which ones you get. That's really big. That's awesome.
Yeah. So you have the regroup step. You can trade cards away. And, new players will tend to just move on. They'll be like, well, I don't know what to discard. And I'm like, that's fine. Then you get a hype step. You can play one hype card. There are cards, that change all of these rules. Like one of the characters is Chi-Chi. She's your bestie. And
cool.
Chi-Chi lets you play an additional hype card on your hype step, which makes a lot of sense. And a lot of these cards, this is a good example. I based them on a lot of them on people that I know. They don't necessarily have their same names or whatever, but in order to make sure we had good representation in the game, I just wanted to make sure that like people could see themselves in the game. And so another good example of that is, let me just see if I can find another.
Yeah.
card.
That's really cool. I love that as a way to do it, right? Not coming up with them, but finding people to model certain things after. I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Or here's Wanda. She's the hater. She's rooting against you.
You're number 2.
Yeah, she basically just says that you all of your hype cards are played as if you were 2 spaces lower on the hype meter.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And like she's based on a kid that I knew in elementary school who was just kind of like never impressed with anything.
Yeah, just dragging everybody down. Yep. Nope. You can't. Yeah. You can never win. Oh, that's so great.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that, and that was a good way to make sure that I was like thinking about people from all different backgrounds and different walks of life and different. I didn't want all of the characters to be like white guys like me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. No,
just because I made the game. So basically you have your regroup step, your hype step, and then you have to tag. It's mandatory to tag to end your turn. If you can't tag, you have to call a timeout. And that's basically where we kind of re-up our hands. There's like maybe 3 or 4 hands across a game. But there's, if you have to call the timeout, other people kind of get rewarded. That's sort of the quick version. So you're trying not to be, it's called being the wimp. You're the wimp and you're like, have to call the timeout. So there's a lot to think about in terms of what, even just like which card am I going to draw? You got to make sure you have a tag card to tag with, but the hype cards are also very powerful. So there's a balance there. And I like giving players meaningful choices.
Yeah, and it just seems like back to back meaningful choices with changing circumstances. That's the best part. Like you said, you're looking at what do you have, and then but at every step you're doing this. Which cards do I grab? Okay, I grabbed this. Do I have enough hype for this? And like you said, it is just so perfectly, at least in theory, and it sounds like you're saying it does. it is so perfectly encapsulating that feeling of being on the playground. Like, I mean, obviously that's the point, but I can just tell because you're like, wait. Constantly changing circumstances, everybody looking over, yelling, like you said. I can feel that it's that kind of game where it really gets the energy in the room going when you're getting down to it.
Yeah, and I think that's why the change of theme to this playground world was so powerful for me as a designer, because I think the themes that I had tried before were not a great match, but it was what I sort of thought I was like, I don't know, not consciously, but like what I thought I was supposed to do, or like
I completely understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to be honest. Like, again, I haven't designed 100 games, so I think I was trying to be a little bit more like the games that I had seen or played. And I'm sure there are games out there that have kids or playgrounds or recess or whatever, but I haven't seen a game that sort of marries that theme with this sort of level of strategy. And I think for like that sort of mid-weight kind of card game player, it's gonna really scratch an itch that for me, they always say, like, I'm a musician too. They say, write a song that's like the kind of song you want to hear.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
This is the game that I want to play. Like, so I think I have to trust that if I just make my game, that there's people out there who will resonate with it as well. And if they don't, then I'll make another game.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like that is the thing, is we are now in a world where you get to make it, and enough people do want it that they get to play it. And like you said, you move on to the next one, but you gotta, we're all about making things that are what we the way we say it is we make what we'd use, in a sort of tabletop role-playing paradigm maybe. But it's that same idea as like, yes, the stuff I work on, I go, that's what I want it to be. And your story is so indicative of that, because as soon as it was what you wanted it to be, as you said, things were suddenly so much more clear. It was almost obvious what things you should do. You kind of found your style, and like you said, it was that goofy. And but I do agree. I don't know of many games with a theme quite like this. Not even just Recess, but like you said, kind of as light as it is with the strategy level you're talking. It's a very interesting mixture for sure. Yeah,
and hopefully that mixture is of interest to people. obviously what are the risks there? Like, I don't know, you see kids on the box and you think it's a kid's game. I guess that's the risk, right? But
Yeah, right. It's got ages on it though. Like, hopefully
Yeah.
people are good enough now. But I agree with you. Like, yeah, people can get the wrong impression, but
Yeah.
it,
Or they
yeah.
see that and they think it's going to be super simple, and then they play it and they go, oh, it's a little more complex than I thought, or whatever. But the truth is, like, that can happen with any game. And I think this is the kind of game that people will play, and then they'll say to their friend, you got to come over and play this game. Like, we're just geeking out on it, and it's a blast. And, I've found that I can, within 7 to 10 minutes of teaching someone how to play, they go, oh, wait a minute. So can I do this? And I'm like,
right.
yep.
Yes. The moment they have questions, that's when
Yes.
you've got them. You're like, yeah, I see. You're formulating.
Right. Like that sugar binge card. This is a really good example because it gives you two choices. You get to choose who to aim it at and which direction, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Wait a minute. Can I play this on you to make you go down? Yeah.
You're like, yes, exactly. And you're like, keep that in mind, right? Yeah. And you're
Yes.
pairing them and deciding. I do really like that because, again, just imagining it, you mentioned it's a very quick game to teach, and it seems like it goes relatively quickly. The games seem just long enough, like you said, that at the end, the players that didn't win go, all right, let's go again. You know what I mean? Let's
Shuffle
do that
up.
again. Yep, shuffle up. Let's do it. And that, again, you've mentioned how much you play tested. It sounds like a nice little sort of nexus of quick but replayable and a little bit keep you up at night. You know what I mean? Like you said, not quite. Yeah.
It is a little keep you up at night. I have gotten, again, my family, my two kids and my wife have played the game a lot. And so they talk about it a lot. And I'm obviously like incredibly indebted to them for how much they've endured me talking about it and all the different versions. But also my nephew, Jared, who's about to turn 21, he has played it since the beginning. And recently I asked him to come visit us, stay the weekend. I was like, I just need your like final sign off. Cause he's a gamer, serious magic, video games, and he's also a skeptic.
Oh, right. Absolutely.
He's the kind of guy who's like, well, even when I first told him about like tag and recess, he was a little bit like, well, I don't know how I feel about that. Right.
Yeah.
And I say that lovingly. Like I love the kid. I've spent hours like playing games with him since he was little.
But yeah, you just got a high bar, you're like, that's good.
Yeah.
You want that sometimes. Yeah.
So I called him up. He came over. We were just like doing reps of games and looking at the balance of the older kids and everything. And we're in the middle of a game and this cool sequence happens. And he kind of like chucked his cards on the table and he was like, Uncle Jesse, this is the best like iteration of this game by far. Like he's like, I want to come up with something to be like, no, this is bad, but it's great. And I love it. And you got there. Like, and kind of like Norman's message, like that was kind of like the end parentheses for me, was Jared cool. being like, dude, I don't know how you did it, but like, even like the tagging mechanic, and he's seen me try all these different things. He's like, I don't know how you figured that out, but like, it's the best implementation of what's most fun about this game. And like, I can't wait to like see it get made. And I was just like, okay, Jared.
Yeah, right. That'll give you some inspiration and motivation to really get something done, right? That's really awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's been quite a journey. My wife insists that she still wants to like. We'll just be having coffee in the afternoon, and she'll be like, "You want to shuffle up?" Like, and I'm like, "You don't have to." Like, no.
Man, I get that. Yeah,
she actually still wants to play, and she can beat the crap out of me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, she's ruthless, and yet like, she's also just like, I want other people to have this level of fun and like replayability, like, and so yes, she's my wife. Like, obviously she's going to be supportive, but she's also been there to be like, nope, that mechanic is dumb, it doesn't work. Like, why did you make that card? That card is just a waste of cardboard. Like, she'll say that,
yeah. Oh, that's
and
great.
I need that. Like, I need that.
And again, it sounds like it's helped. Like you said, the amount of playtesting you've said you've done. I don't know. I don't know that most games that go on Kickstarter have been playtested quite this much. And I'm certainly not an expert. That's a bit anecdotal, but I'm like, it sounds like it's been played just so much over years, and it shows based on even just what you're explaining,
Yeah, and I heard that too, and I just thought, I'm not going to put this out there until I know that there is a really solid game with a good rules system. I'm a systems guy. Like, I get inspired. All my other games that I've started to work on, they're all inspired by systems, I'm looking at things and I'm like, like I tried to design a game that was like about mail delivery,
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm
like,
immediately in on stuff like
right?
that.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, that system of like, there's a thing, it's put in a box, somebody picks it up, they bring it, it gets sorted, and now it goes to a different box. Like, I was like, that's a cool system for like a card game, and I never really got there with the mail game. So if somebody wants to try making that happen, like, it's probably there probably is one out there, but I love systems, and I love thinking about systems as card games. I just love card games, and so. Yeah, so I think the system here is tight. I think it works. I think it's been vetted, and it's fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, so absolutely, especially if you've gotten this far, very good talk about game design and game creation. Back Hype Tag on Kickstarter. It's still live, here for a little bit longer, and yeah, we're definitely gonna get it funded, I think, and yeah, it's going to be really great. So, Jesse, I did want to ask you, as we wrap up, is there anything else that... well, first, I suppose, is there anything else you wanted to cover? We can start with that.
No, I think you've done a great job of just kind of finding our way through, some really cool topics. So yeah, I feel great about it. Thanks for the opportunity. And it's just as it was when we talked the first time. It's just a pleasure to chat with you about games and game design, and
Yeah, it's really my favorite. I just love it.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you a question. I was going to ask just separately, but before we wrap up, what can you tell me more about some of your favorite card games? I would like to ask about your favorite, especially if it's a board game rather than like a collectible game. And maybe specifically a mechanic that you're a big fan of, like your tag mechanic, but like I've got a few.
Yep. Okay, yeah. I mean, obviously I've mentioned Magic already. I do love Magic, and I know Magic is sort of, people either hate it or love it. But I love playing Limited, which is where you are drafting. Everybody has 3 packs of cards. You open one, you take a card, you pass it around. And the truth is, you want to talk about a mechanic that I love? Drafting. I love drafting. 7 Wonders, like the draft mechanic in 7 Wonders, like for picking cards. Believe it or not, one of my favorite card games is Sushi Go.
Oh, it's so good. It's really, really good.
It's so good, and it's the draft is the game. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, it took me a little while to wrap my brain around that when I first got it. I was just like, yeah.
So I love that mechanic of just like enfranchising the players to have some say in what game pieces they're going to interact with. And actually, as a little side note, there is a way to play Hype Tag as a draft. You can draft and then have your own little hype deck. That's just a little side note. But so that I love drafting as a mechanic. I think another game that really has sort of like deck building games I love. There's actually a Harry Potter themed deck building game that I love. Harry Potter Battle for Hogwarts. And there's actually an expansion as well called the Monster Book of Monsters expansion or something like that.
Yeah. Oh man.
Like it's definitely like a kind of a midweight game. It's not like super over the top, but kind of like Hype Tag, it's got this fun like Harry Potter theme, but the mechanic is all about like drafting cards into your hand and then playing them, and they combine with which character you're playing, much like in Hype Tag. But it's something that you can play with any level of gamer, and it's really fun, and it gets really, really hard. There's basically like 7. It's a little bit like a legacy game. It has like 7.
Oh wow, okay.
There's the base deck, and it has like 7 decks. Once you beat it the first time, you open the next deck, then you beat it again.
That sounds awesome. That's really cool.
Awesome.
Wow.
I love the Harry Potter deck building game. And we played it as a family, and then we played it again, and then 2 of my good friends, Aaron and Colleen, who just backed the Kickstarter, like I told them about it, and they played it and beat it, and so that's a really good one. But part of what I love about it is you have some choice over the game pieces that you're using. And I think that's ultimately what I do love about Magic the most, is just having some say in like which game pieces you're going to use. It takes it from being like chess. There's a chess-like aspect, and it makes it more, a little higher variance, a little, you might make the wrong choice and then you pay the price. Like I like that kind of thing. So.
Exactly. It's a little, a little more risk, but then that's for everybody. I do really love a good draft for the same reasons. Yeah. Probably my least favorite part about Magic is the idea that you make the deck, you know what I mean? And it's depending on how much knowledge you have and to some degree how much you're willing to pay. So I love a good draft because Yeah, like you said, it's just we're all on equal ground now. There's a lot more variance, but it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, same. And also it allows you to invest your personality into the game with the choices that you make. And I think, again, I think Hype Tag has an element of that too, even just choosing which of the kids you're going to play. And they have little trait bonuses like that that kind of like steer your play style a little bit too. And you get to sort of be like, oh no, I always play Ren. Like I'm always Ren. Like, and
Yeah,
Ren
like, that's
rewards
just
you
what
for
I like,
playing, like she rewards you for playing SAS cards. So like, you're kind of like the SAS card player. You know, Nico, his trait is popular, so he rewards you for playing characters, like that kind of thing. So I like being able to invest yourself. And yeah, maybe it stings a little more when you lose, but it also, I think, is the kind of thing that makes you want to come back for more. So anyway, I hope people watching will check out our Kickstarter. We're 70% funded. It ends on August 12th, so get in there. We're on Facebook and Instagram, Clothespin Games. And we're doing some how to play videos right now. We've been just doing some fun stuff. So yeah, check us out. And thanks a lot, James, for having me on. It's been a blast.
Yeah, this has been really great. Yes, thank you everybody for watching. As he said, back Hype Tag on Kickstarter. I'm getting my copy. I've already backed. I absolutely can't wait to play it. So yeah, Jesse, it's been a pleasure, man. Thanks.
All right, thanks.